Hey, welcome to another geopolitical analysis video, guys. Please subscribe, like, and share the video. Exciting times. Donald Trump has done it again. Second term, quite victorious against a lot of smear campaigns over the last few years, several accusations, courts, etc. We know that single handedly he's been somebody who has gone through such derision, and it comes to no surprise, as I will talk about further in this video, about the project of the new American century and the NeoCons, and why Donald Trump, when he talks about the deep state, is essentially talking about an enemy, because we hear a lot about the deep state. What is the deep state? And today I want to do a brief analysis on that. However, I think it's very important to recognize that he is one of the few politicians in the world today that is treated with such warmth, such appreciation, such love from his fans and his electorate base. It is very impressive to see in the rallies how many people really believe in this man and really feel that he is somebody who's been somewhat marginalized, disenfranchised in the media, accused. He's faced countless of charges that we know for a fact many of them had no merit, no base at all, but it was just part of the greater smear campaign. I want to start with two things, and then we will move on to the deep state discussion that I want to make with you guys. Now, the first part that I want to discuss about is the domestic influence. I think this is a new chapter in the US. I think that we're going to see major changes coming in. We can see from Donald Trump his entourage, because in reality, presidents are not the ones, sure, they can have executive orders, but they're not the ones running everything. And I think that he will do a much better job in his second term, because the people that he is surrounded with are quite competent. We look at the technological aspect. He has Elon Musk, who has shown time and time again when people, again, another disenfranchised figure who's quite infamous in the media for his statements and for Twitter and in general things that he has to say, his connection with China, etc. But overall, I think that having JFK, RFK, in the post of attacking the lobbying and the funding that goes on in the media by the big pharmaceuticals, and then having Elon Musk in the frontier of technology innovation, but also fintech, financial payments. He's also been a part of that world. Let's not forget his beginnings in PayPal, which pretty much changed the whole payment system. So essentially, he has figures around him that I think this time are going to make his presidency much more effective and much more solution oriented. We know that the whole deficit discussion is an issue. We know that the debt market, which is something that he knows pretty well because of his business endeavors, needs tightening. And I do think that we're going to see a liquidity crisis at some point in order to tackle the deficit. But again, if the US prints more and has proper asset allocation, they would be able to financialize the debt like they've been doing, but in a more effective way by shrinking the spending, the government spending, which is inflationary. That is where the true inflation comes from, the increase of money supply and the running deficit, the fiscal irresponsibility of the U.S. government. So domestically, I think we're going to see a huge boom. We noticed in the Dow Jones market, the next day, 1,500 points rally. Look at crypto, look at the financial instruments and the bank stocks. They're all posed to go much, much higher. And I do think that financially we're going to see some sort of remodeling. Now, I'm not trying to paint a beautiful picture here. I do think that we're going to see a lot of positive changes that are going to put America again on the forefront um, in many industries, in many parts that it used to be. We do know that before his term ended, he wanted to reinvest in the military, and there was a huge investment package for warfare, weapons, etc., drones, and whatnot. But I do think, and this is the second part that I want to bring up, when it comes to, again, we will see a lot of drilling, a lot of oil production. The energy sector is going to be a target, an area in order to boost the economy. I think that we're also going to see a lot of deregulation, and these are very good things internally. However, I think on the international front, it might create some destabilization from the aspect of pulling away from these posts that the US has been put in there by the NeoCons as the watchdog, right? And I do think that although we didn't see a war during the first Donald Trump presidency, we did have COVID. And you might ask yourself, okay, well, how did Trump affect this? Well, the fact that Roosevelt said that in politics nothing is a coincidence, everything is planned, brings us to this uh, idea that if in his first term he had this, I don't even know what to call it. Yeah, it was a pandemic, but it was more than just a virus and disease. It had so many negative um, you know, negative consequences to families who could not do things. We were limited, our freedoms were limited. There were so many questions about the origins, the lab leak theory, which is very, very plausible, and more people are stepping up and admitting that a lot of scientists in the beginning did believe this, but they were not allowed, again, by the pharmaceutical interest, right? And also the government agenda. But I think that on an international level, we're going to see Europe face the further destabilization, because I don't think Donald Trump has any interest in Europe, and nor should he. I think that Britain, the first time, who were trying time and time again to put him in a situation to create the war, more conflict in Ukraine, and was always trying to pull back from that. I think that Britain is not going to succeed second time to force the US into further war. And this leads me to the final discussion, what I want to talk about, the deep state. Now, many people hear this and think it's a shadowy thing within the government, from the vernacular, the expression that we have, deep state, and everything else that follows in the shadows. The reality is that the neocon agenda, who were a select group of people who created the project of the new American century, is a very interesting publication, because everything that we've seen in terms of global warfare and global destabilization, regime change, the infamous expression regime change, is essentially just a playbook of the neocons destabilizing Gaddafi in Libya, Assad in Syria, Iran is part of the Arab Spring, the Muslim Brotherhood, which Obama was funding, was fueling, right? They are the people who have been smear campaigning against Donald Trump. They are the people who have this incessant obsession to bring again the Cold War against Russia. They're the ones in the media, the Newlands, the Boltons, the John Kerrys, all these diplomats, Secretary of State, who have been pushing this Russian fear mongering that Russia is the enemy of the US. Russia has to be the target. We have to obliterate Iran. We have to take out all these different governments. These are all fabrications, dark fabrications of the NeoCons who created this whole project of what the new American century was to be. So Trump has defeated that. Trump has shown that he is somebody who wants to put America on the map again for better reasons. He was always very critical of the Bush administration, all these wars. And I do think that by pulling out from these regions, it might create some more conflict. And yes, it might give some more, especially when it comes to perhaps Iran or perhaps other different factions in the world, it might give them a little bit of this unknown territory. How far do they push the envelope, and how back can they retreat? Because Donald Trump is not somebody that you want to negotiate with necessarily, especially when he has shown competence and respect in the world stage. There is an element of fear, and I think that that is something that can push different factions around the world to make a lot of irrational decisions. But I think it's very important to remember that the US cannot always be the watchdog of the world, and that the free open market that he claims he wants to resume, which America created, capitalism, right, from the days of Reagan, is something that it should be the epicenter here. Now you're going to hear a lot of European leaders oppose the U.S. lack of support. I do think that certain wars will stop. But one thing that I'm afraid of is that come 2025, when the treasury bonds are due to be paid to the Chinese, I do believe that we might see escalation with China. And I do believe that Donald Trump is going to prepare for a bigger war. COVID was a war too during the Donald Trump era, the first presidency. And I do think that we're going to see again a resurgence of China, because I think that COVID was just the excuse to target China. And I think at this point we must prepare, because at some point inflation will come back. And I do believe that although they're going to be very much more fiscally responsible, I do believe that the U.S. government is going to try to pursue the crypto innovations and also try to destabilize the Fed. But let's not forget that the Fed as an independent entity, although there's a conflict and spat between Donald Trump and Jerome Powell, we know the comments that were made, I do believe that negative interest rates might be a tool that Donald Trump wants to see implemented. And if that happens, that's going to open the gateway, the Pandora's box for double digits inflation, and much, much higher. So I think it's very promising in some aspects, but I think it's also a bit scary, because we do know that there is going to be a lot of instability with China. And I think China will be the scapegoat for many things to come. And the aspect of Taiwan is going to be in the focus. And having said that, I think we need to all prepare, because although Donald Trump for a very long time was portrayed as the Manchurian candidate, as the person who was in bed with Russia, and Russia was the enemy, and that Donald Trump was siding with the enemy, I think that now the NeoCons are going to have nothing to say against him. And as he is further unfolding this element of escalation with China. And we know that there are essentially two spheres out there that are always combative, but at the same point require balance. And you have the East and the West. How will Donald Trump and the West save themselves from falling down the cliff where real commodities have been fleeing to the East as the main greater producers? And it seems though that BRICS is the new epicenter of power. And that is something that Donald Trump is going to have to pull the West away from, and having a resurgence in the industrials. And that's why I do think that the Dow Jones, the markets sniffed that out some time ago. They priced in his victory. And I think that we will see a reindustrialization in the United States, repatriating jobs and having this new resurgence of Make America Great Again, which is a logo that is very catchy. But I do think that the contingency that Donald Trump has surrounded himself with are very competent to achieve this. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed my rambling about this. Like, subscribe, share this video, and we'll see you next time. Bye.